Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And on this Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we have on the line with us Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes. Assemblywoman, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So you've been doing a lot of traveling around the 133rd Assembly District. You've been in Hornell, Dansville, all kinds of places. Can you tell us about your visits around the district?
I have. First, let me tell all of your listeners that I do wish them a very happy and healthy Martin Luther King Day. It is a very important day, and I hope people are taking the time to reflect on the changes we've made in this country and in our society in the last 40 or 50 years. Obviously, we still have a long ways to go, but we have made progress, and let's cross our fingers that we continue to.
That's great. That's great. Tell us about your recent visit to Hornell, where you met with some highway departments.
Yeah, I was there yesterday, and right down on, I think it's called the Main Place, right on Main Street. I met with the Steuben highway supervisors, and a great group of guys, some gals there as well, and we had a really great meeting. It was my opportunity to introduce myself to a lot of them. Some I've met before, but most I met for the first time. I heard about some of the issues that are going on down there that are particularly important to your region. And hopefully either I or my chief of staff will be at their next meeting, because they're going to have somebody coming down from the state to talk about some new regulations on putting brine on some of the dirt roads in the summer, which is done to control maintenance and the dust. So we're going to be looking forward to continuing our conversations, but it was absolutely great. It was great to be back in Hornell. But we've been down that direction a fair amount.
Yes, you have. You met with Congressman Tom Reed, I believe, a couple of weeks ago in Dansville?
Yes, he was very gracious. He called me up, and no particular agenda item. He just wanted to be able to introduce himself. So we met over at the Sunrise Diner over on Main Street there over in Dansville, and chatted for about an hour before he needed to take off. But I mean, I've been down there, and I've met with Mayor Buckley, who was very, very gracious. And I'm coming back next Thursday to go on a tour of the city of Hornell, which he's going to be guiding us on, and I'm very grateful to him. He's been super. He's been very gracious and cordial, and we've been reaching out with issues, and I know we're going to have a really, really good working relationship, and I look forward to that. But, I mean, I was down in Cohocton, in the village of Cohocton, meeting with the Cohocton village mayor. I believe it's Mayor Sorrells and the town supervisor. I believe the town clerk and the highway guys and a number of other people were there, and they were telling me about some of their specific issues. Goodness, we've been over to Prattsburg, and I met with Jeff Black, who's the school superintendent over there, and got a tour. So, I mean, we've been staying very busy, and those are just some of the things I've been doing down in Steuben County. We've been running around Monroe and Livingston also.
Okay, and we're talking this morning with Assembly Marjorie Byrnes, the Livingston County Republican. Marjorie Byrnes, your thoughts on your first few days in the state legislature in Albany. What's your impressions of the work at the state capitol that gets done there and the issues that are big right now?
Well, it was certainly very interesting. I'm told that this year was an exception. Normally things start a little bit slow and then build up over time. And this year, unfortunately, with the Republicans losing the state Senate, it was a very quick move on the part of the Democrats to start pushing through a lot of their very progressive agenda. So what normally should be a slow time, instead, the first night I was there, we were there till 9 o'clock at night. And a lot of legislation passed that I think was well-meaning, a lot of election law reform. which, I truly believe was well-meaning. We all want people to participate in votes. We all want the cost to be as little as possible, because running elections is quite expensive. So combining primaries is thought, potentially anyway, to be a cost-saving measure. But I did have some concerns with a lot of their legislation because it was very open-ended. I didn't think it was that well thought out. One of the problems with the election law amendments and changes is that we're going to be doing primaries now all the time in the month of June, which means that people who are running for office, they've got to be, and all their supporters and the committees for any political party, Republicans, Democrats, any of them, are going to have to be out at the end of February and all of March when it's cold, it's snowy, and I think it's dangerous to be out going door to door trying to get petitions at that time of year. But that notwithstanding, it did pass, and that's what we're going to have to live with. And they do believe it will increase voter participation. I do hope that's the case, because they do have some safety concerns about it.
Early voting is what you're talking about right now. I wanted to get your thoughts, Marjorie Byrnes, on what was said in the other House in Albany by State Senator Kathy Young, the Wlea Republican. She spoke on this issue recently.
We don't know the cost. We don't know the funding source. We don't have a system in place to administer the program. We don't have any data that establishes that it increases voter turnout. We don't have voter equity between upstate and New York City. We don't know why we are rushing this bill through as the first bill of the session. The budget is established by the executive. This bill is before the House. This bill is an unfunded mandate. If the governor is going to do this and funding it, then why are we doing this now?
Assemblywoman Byrnes, your thoughts on what Senator Young said there?
Oh my God, she couldn't have been more accurate, and that is absolutely correct. A lot of in the Assembly, a lot of the things the Republicans were raising, in a lot of ways boiled down to, if we're going to ram this through and we're going to change things, can we wait a year so that we get our ducks in a row and we know exactly what's going on, funding sources and things of that nature? And the Democrats wanted no part of it. So that's the unfortunate part with being in the minority. In other years, the same legislation passed the Assembly but didn't pass the Senate. And this year, it is flying through. And again, we all want voter participation. There's no question about that. I know that even in the towns and villages, the participation rate is sorely lacking. So it is important, but my goodness, it's not thought through. And she's absolutely correct. I was on the radio station up in Rochester with Harry Bronson, who is one of the Democrat assemblymen from Monroe County. And he admitted that it's an unfunded mandate. But he said he'll put in something in order to try to get it funded. Well, I think the chances of that happening are slim to non-existent. And it's going to be a cost that's going to be borne by our local Board of Elections. And our counties, they're already burdened, in our villages. They're going to have to hire more election inspectors. And again, early voting theoretically is a phenomenal thing. But they're going to, rather than just having election inspectors on the normal election day, which they'll still be needed for, they're going to have to be there for every day that there's early voting as well. And it's hard to find election inspectors now from either party. And on top of that, that at night when the polls close, that election machine isn't going anywhere. That computer is remaining there because it's going to be there the next day. Somebody's going to have to provide security so that the integrity of the election process isn't lost. So these are things that were discussed and were raised by the Republicans, and regrettably they fell in deaf ears.
Talking to Republican Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes. She's from Caledonia over in Livingston County. A couple weeks ago was Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. And I see on your Facebook page you have a photo of the CalMom school resource officer. Tell us, Marjorie Byrnes, do you hear a lot from law enforcement yet at this point in the legislative district? And are there any legislative issues coming up related to law enforcement or even in particular school resource officers?
Well, I'm actually glad you asked. On January 14th, New York State Senator Patrick Galvin introduced in the Senate a bill that directly impacts school resource officers. What it does is expands who could be a school resource officer to include retired police officers, retired troopers, retired deputies, and also make some other provisions so that they would be state funded through the current aid that they receive, which of course we'll try to get it bumped up a little bit in order to cover any extra expense. It's still left up to the schools if they want to do this, and they would be armed school resource officers, which is one of the things I really wanted. And when I saw that he had introduced that legislation, because that was something I campaigned on heavily, believing that we did need an armed school resource officer in every school to protect our children. And I reached out to him, and he and his staff indicated that they would be thrilled if we offered companion legislation into the Assembly. So I'm hoping that within the next week that will be introduced in the Assembly, and that at that point I believe that the senator and I we'll either be doing a press release or a press conference. That hasn't been determined yet. Schedules can be very, very busy up there. But that we will make a public announcement of the legislation being in both houses, and I'm hoping that this will be a really good thing for our communities and our schools.
Going to take a quick break, and then we'll check the forecast. Talking to Livingston County Republican Assembly Marjorie Byrnes, who is now in the Arrigo seat in the State Assembly. That's the 133rd Assembly seat. Back in just a moment.
A good night's sleep starts with the right pillow. That's where MyPillow comes in, and we're excited to announce the new 4-pack special. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the 4-pack special tab, and save 50% off the 4-pack, which includes 2 MyPillow premiums and 2 Go Anywhere pillows. Use promo code SKY at checkout or call 1-800-635-1825. That's 1-800-635-1825. Or go to MyPillow.com, click the 4-pack special tab, and use promo code SKY at checkout.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carolyn. Okay, Rob, first the snow, now the wind chill.
That's right, Brian. The cold has followed the storm that brought the snow over the weekend. Arctic high pressure stretched out this morning from the Great Lakes states all the way down into Alabama. It will cross the area over the next 24 hours. Then our next storm system, which is taking shape in the central United States, will head our way. That'll bring us a little bit of light snow late tomorrow night and a little bit of light rain Wednesday afternoon. Brian, for today, a lot of cloudiness. May see a few flurries or snow showers, bitterly cold. It's windy. We're 5 to 10 above this afternoon. We've got a wind chill warning in effect through 7 p.m. this evening. Sunrise this morning was at 7:33. It'll set tonight at 5:10. As the high builds in tonight, any flurries or snow showers will diminish. We're partly cloudy overnight, cold. Lows will be 5 below. Tomorrow, partial sunshine. The worst of the cold weather will move out into the Atlantic tomorrow, so we get a chance to warm up a little bit. We're 20 to 25 tomorrow afternoon with that sunshine. The system I mentioned in the central part of the country heads our way tomorrow night. Cloudy skies. Light snow develops late tomorrow night, 15 to 20. Light snow will mix with a little bit of sleet and then rain, and change to light rain at times Wednesday afternoon. Highs on Wednesday, 35 to 40, Brian.
Back with Republican Assemblywoman of Livingston County, Marjorie Byrnes. Marjorie, Assemblywoman Byrnes, did you have any thoughts on the pay raise? Late last year in the state legislature, a pay raise was passed. The governor pushed for it. Governor Cuomo thought it was a great idea in reforming the legislature. Did you have any thoughts on the pay raise for state lawmakers?
Oh, absolutely. I'm absolutely opposed to it. I think what should have happened is that members of the Assembly and the Senate should have had the guts to put the bills in before their own chambers and vote on them in front of the public so that the public knew what they thought up or down about pay raises. Instead, what they did is they delegated this responsibility to a committee who came up with this. And, I mean, I'll grant you, it is a huge job. It's not a part-time job. It is a full-time job. So I am glad I'm retired, so I do have the time to devote to it. But when I ran, you know that it's designated as a part-time job. You know what the salary is, and you accept things on those terms. I do think that if ever it were to come before us, I would absolutely vote no. And I think a lot of the other assemblymen and the other assemblywomen would do the same thing. We look at it and we look at our communities, and we live in a fairly rural district with families that are struggling just to pay their taxes and to pay their bills every month, every week. And when government unnecessarily spends money on itself, it makes us all look bad when we go out to visit our constituents. And I don't like that. It's not something you can turn down, but I am hoping in the near future to come out with alternative solutions, maybe making a few more charitable deductions this year than normal, but in order to give some of the money back to needy organizations in our communities. Because I'd have been happier if they took that money, that $30,000, and gave it to us as what they call member money, so that we could take it then out into our community to special projects and special needs and be able to designate it there than it going into our own bank accounts. So, it might be done on an unofficial way down the line here, but I really do think ultimately that's where the money deserves to be.
I'm wondering, Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes, we spoke with about some of the other lawmakers earlier in the show. Wondering, have you had a chance to either reach out or have them reach out to you? Let's see, Assemblyman Joe Giglio, or State Senator Tom O'Mara, or State Senator Kathy Young. Have you met with any of those names yet?
I have met, and I've seen Phil Palmisano.
Right.
And yes, I have spoken with Senator O'Mara and Senator Young, actually just about all of them, if not individually, then in a group setting, when we've had a couple of receptions in Albany where the current members of the Assembly kind of get to meet the newbies. So it was really great. All of them have been very, very gracious and very kind, and I think we're going to have a phenomenal working relationship down the line here, because there are some things that I think once we're done with this ramming things through by the Democrats at the front end and the dust settles a little bit, I'm really confident that we can really turn to the issues that affect our area. It looks like the governor wants to take away some of the AIM money, some of the money, aid to the cities and the villages and the towns that they're currently receiving. Right now, that's a little bit on the cutting blocks, and they're cutting back on it. And so many mayors already have reached out to us to try to step up to the plate as much as we can to fight to get those funds restored. And, obviously we've got the infrastructure issues, which we've talked about many times before, including not just the roads and bridges. And in Cohocton, they have a pretty significant issue with trying to get some bridges repaired, but also broadband access, where some of the citizens and businesses who have no or only intermittent internet service can start getting on board. As we talked about before, our modern society just requires being able to be able to get on a computer, unless there's a few people who don't have a desire to. But most people, it's almost a necessity nowadays. So we got to get in there and fight for these things, and I'm hoping that very soon it'll free up in Albany when they get the little bit of years of pent up wanting to pass bills through. When they get that out of their system a little bit, we can start getting down to business that affects us.
Down to the last couple of minutes with Republican Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes of the 133rd Assembly District. Assemblywoman Byrnes, was wondering, did you have any thoughts, and this would be the final question, any thoughts on the governor's proposed budget? I know that Assemblyman Palmisano and Senator O'Meara, who you both mentioned, they were very concerned that there would not be enough money for the CHIPS or Consolidated Highway Improvement Program. Did you want to weigh in on that one?
Oh, absolutely. I agree with them. The way that he phrased his his speech for the State of the State certainly indicated a very downstate heavy agenda. And that's a little bit frightening, not just for Republicans who live upstate, but for Democrats as well. You know, all of us need good roads and good bridges. Our highway superintendents are out there knocking themselves out, trying to make sure that we're safe and that our roads and our bridges are safe. But they can't do it without the appropriate funding. So the fact that he is pushing money towards downstate to the detriment of upstate because there's only so much money is a very, very big concern. And I think even some of the upstate Democrats are very concerned that it'll affect their districts as well. So this is one thing I think that unify everybody upstate, no matter what the political party is that they belong to, is we're not going to be fighting for Republican, Democrat. We need to fight for upstate. And I think that will get a lot of people on board. I certainly hope so, and that's what we're going to work for.
Assemblywoman Marjorie Byrnes, thank you for taking time out of this busy holiday weekend to talk to us here on this MLK Day.
Thank you. I appreciate all your courtesies, and I hope we talk soon.
It's AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.